Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm Andy RC and today I'm going to be checking out the Diatone GT-R90. Now if you don't know who Diatone are, they have released some pretty nice 5-inch class models. So they released the GT200, which I reviewed here on the channel, and then they recently updated that model, and sadly I didn't get to check that one out, but it seemed like a pretty nice model, and also the Tyrant S, which I reviewed as well. So this is their entry into the 2-inch class, and I think it's very brave going for the 2-inch class because it is such a saturated market, but this one does have some unique features which separates it from the competition. First of all, it supports a 2 to 4S battery, and as far as I'm aware, it's the first bind and fly, plug and fly, RTF, ARTF, whatever you want to call it, that will take a 4S battery. The problem with that, though, is because it's such a small model, it's tricky to find a suitable 4S battery. In today's review, I'm going to be using this 550 milliamp battery, but it's a little bit too big, and I'm definitely going to get diminishing returns, I think, when it comes to this battery against the 3S battery, because we're dealing with a smaller model there. This is going to be heavier. In fact, I think this weighs 59 grams here, and the Copter weighs 76 grams. So yeah, you can get smaller batteries than this. They go down to about 400 milliamp, but I have a feeling that the 4S capabilities of this is just going to be a bit of a gimmick, and it's probably going to fly just as nice on a 3S. But I'm going to go straight for the 4S today, because why not? So let's take a look at some of the specifications. Now, Diatone usually pretty good at putting really decent components on their Copters for a decent price. So it is a 90mm frame, and it's really thick actually. It's using 3mm carbon. The motors are Diatone branded, but they're actually a rebrand of Sunny Sky Edge Racing motors. They are 1104 6000 kV motors, and they are a lower kV to cater for the fact that you can use a 3 and a 4S battery. And the propellers, you might notice against all the pictures, these aren't the stock propellers, and Diatone are also very good at doing this, putting great Copters together and giving you terrible propellers, and that's what they have done here. These are the stock propellers, and they remind me of those old DYS propellers that weren't very good. They've got a really strange curve here, and it made the Copter really unstable, so I'm not even gonna try these propellers. Instead, I'm going to try the Gemfan 4-blade propellers. They are the 2035, and they fit. So yeah, it takes a 2-inch propeller, this one, and no bigger. You can see very close to the frame. And we have a stack down here, and usually I start with explaining the ESCs, but actually the first component in this stack is the VTX, and it's a TBS Unify Pro. And that's amazing for the price of this, because I think at the making of this video it's about £130, which is pretty nicely priced. And as far as I can tell, this is a V3 Unify Pro. I've got a V3 spare somewhere, and the batch number is exactly the same, the version number is exactly the same, and that is a $40 VTX. So amazing that they've managed to get the price point down on this. And it's also connected to the smart audio on the UART 3, I think. So this is the VTX going in here, these black wires. So yeah, you can control the output of this, and it goes from 25 milliwatt all the way up to 800 milliwatt. I wouldn't suggest using 800 milliwatt on this tiny Copter though. I tend to find that 25 milliwatt is actually fine, so we don't overload the system there. And then above that, we have got a 4-in-1 ESC board. It is flashed with BL Halley S 16.6. That's important, I'll explain that later. Yeah, they are a 15 amp ESC with a 20 amp burst, so it's going to be fine for our 4S battery there. And then above that we've got Diatone's own F4 flight control. It's called the Diatone Fury F4. You can buy it separately, and with it being an F4, it is actually on soft mounts here, which is important for the F4 because they are very susceptible to noise and vibrations. Now, all of this stack is in this little 3D printed mount, and in true Diatone style you get given a spare one of those, and they're advertising the fact that you can just slide this VTX out here. You've got this little latch there, and you can. That is how I have compared it to my V3 Unify Pro, and you can see there it's using a sleeve dipole antenna, and we have this part of the 3D printed mount here where the antenna sits, and this is a little bit of a downside for me, because if they're doing like 3D printed stuff, I would have preferred them to have it going vertical. I know why they do this, they're just covering themselves because this can break in a crash, but we're going to have some reception problems, I feel, even with the power of this VTX. I'd love to see someone redesign this stack here and have the antenna pointing vertical, because yeah, a bit of a waste of a really decent VTX there, but I'll see how it flies anyways. But from my experience, these whip antennas always do better on a vertical rather than horizontal. So if we move to the back here, we've got an XT30 connector and a weird circuit board. Is actually a current sensor. So yeah, that's something else that's unique about this copter. So yeah, it's running Betaflight on-screen display, of course. It's come flash with version 3.21, which is nice because it's a fairly recent version. But yeah, it's a bit of a gimmick, to be honest, because it doesn't work too well. It's not calibrated correctly, and the voltage calibration on here is slightly out as well, so I thought that was a little bit of a shame. Then at the front we've got a Ccd camera, which is awesome. It seems to be almost identical to the Fury Bee MS camera, which is a copy of the Micro Swift. We even got the slot there for the on-screen display to change the settings, although I don't think they've given us the controller for that, which is unusual for Diatone. This one as well, if you're thinking, oh, this will be good for a beginner, I would say not, just because of the extra stuff that you have to do to get it going. First of all is the receiver, so it's actually a plug and play, so you have to add your own receiver. Now it comes with a little connector, but it's not this connector. It's actually this 4-pin 1mm pitch JST, and I'm using this D8 FreeSky receiver, which should be fine for this tiny model. It's actually got the RSSI and the AUX 5. I think it's called the FD800. I'll link that in the below, but you can see that uses a 3-pin, so I've had to lift the tabs up on this and replace it with a 3-pin. Not too much of a hassle. However, we've got some little jumpers here on the board, and you have to play about with those. So it came set up with the jumper on the 3 volt for like DSMX or something like that, whereas this is a 5 volt receiver, so I had to undo that jumper and then resolder it for the 5 volt. It was also set up as PPM, and there's a jumper for that as well. So you have to unsolder it and resolder it to S-Bus if you want to use an S-Bus receiver. Not a problem for me, but if you're expecting to just plug this in without having to do any soldering, which a lot of people do, then that wasn't the case for me. I guess if you were running DSMX, then you could just plug it straight in. In fact, I think there are some DSMX receivers out there that plug into these 4 pins here. So yeah, there's that to bear in mind. Now, this is a really nice copter with some really nice components, but they have failed on one particular component. Can you spot it? There's no buzzer on this, which I think, considering the components that are on this, is a little bit of a fail. Now, there is something you can do about it. If I just lift my receiver up, probably not going to be able to see it. There's two pads on the front there. You can add a buzzer, and I do think there'd have been room for a buzzer in here. You could just set it on top or something like that. I'm not actually going to do that because I'm going to set up D-shot commands. So yeah, this ESC 4-in-1 here, it is set up for D-shot 600. The problem is version 16.6 of BL Halley S does not support D-shot commands. So again, when we're talking about beginners and things like that, so I've upgraded it to 16.7, which does support D-shot commands. You use the BL Halley configurator and do flash all and just choose the latest version. But be careful, because they have messed around with the settings in BL Halley Suite. They've done a couple of reversals on the ESC, so the direction of the motor. They've also changed the starting power to 0.7. The default's 0.5, so if you are doing that, make sure you record those settings there. So something else that you have to do in order to get the motors working as a lost model alarm is you have to go into the CLI and you have to put this command in, because out of the box it is expecting a beeper and you have to switch that to D-shot commands. So you have to put this command in. Let me see if I can get it right. So it is set beeper underscore D-shot underscore beacon underscore tone equals 1. Actually, you can do 1 to 5. 1 to 5 is not how loud it is, it's a pitch. So 1 is the lowest pitch and 5 is the highest pitch. If you want your dog to find your copter or something like that, make sure you press save as well, and then it will work as a beeper if you set it up in the modes. So it only had arming set up in the mode, so I've added all of that as well, so like angle mode and acro. It was already set up for like dynamic filtering, anti-gravity, air mode. It had its own PIDs in there, but because I'm going to be using a 4S battery, I'm going to have to play with the PIDs, because these heavier batteries require much lower gains. I don't know why that is, but it just does. Otherwise you get fluttering and stuff like that and your motors will get too hot. Another command that I like to put in, just in case everything else fails, is set small underscore angle equals 180. It means that if you get stuck upside down or something like that, or just stuck and you've lost your model, you can just arm it very quickly and you'll hear it fluttering in the grass. So just a couple of more things. You can change the angle of the camera, just undo these screws here and mess it around, although I quite like the angle on this. The lens on here, I don't know if you can see it, it's actually got some silicone around it to stop it moving. I think it's a 2.3mm lens that you get on these copies of the Micro Swift, and I'm expecting good things from this. It's come as a PAL camera though, and one thing that I found with the PAL versions of these Micro Swift copies is at the bottom right hand corner you get like a weird white patch. I'm not sure what that is, and I've got a couple of NTSC versions of this camera and you don't get that. So yeah, there's that to bear in mind, but not too much of a problem, I don't think. Also, this battery strap here, it's a small thing. It's a bit of a pain to get in, and it's not quite big enough for this 4S battery. It just about fits, but I'm going to have to be careful. Otherwise, my battery will start dangling about the place. One thing that is good about this model, kind of, is that you're given these prop protectors if you want to fly this guy indoors. We have got these little motor mounts here, and this is to replace those. What I don't like about that is, same with the King Kong models, is you have to spend probably about 20 minutes unscrewing all of the motors. So if you are watching this video and thinking, oh, let's make another microcopter, make it so these can just like clip on and clip off. You would have such a win if you did that, because I don't like having to unscrew and screw these on because it affects the flight characteristics. So I like to have these off when I'm flying outside and on when flying indoors. It's nice that it's an option because some of these 2-inch models don't even have that as an option, but I'd like a better solution for them sticking underneath there than having to spend loads of time unscrewing all of these. But yeah, you get those. I already talked about the spare stack thing there. You get loads of stuff with Diatone, loads of stickers, a warning about, you know, don't fly it into a dog or something. And then we got a load of stuff in here, so cable ties, a load of the spare plastic bits that are just dotted around the place. And then we've got like the opposite end of the XT30 there, I guess, if you want to convert a battery or something. Got a silicone mat that I would recommend putting on, stop your battery slipping there, and a couple of rubber bands, and just various spare screws and stuff, and that is about it. So let's get and take this thing for a fly and see how it performs. Well, it's a very toasty -6 out here today, so I'm gonna have to be quick because all of my GoPros keep locking up and it's foggy as well. So yeah, let's go for a takeoff. I'm going straight for the 4S. Why not? Hopefully it'll give you an indication of the punch. Yeah, so this is a 550 milliamp 4S. And the punch, not much different than a 3S of the same size, which is hardly surprising, I guess. But it's still plenty. Yeah, I always see videos on like skiing holidays of people using GoPros. But what they don't show you is that there's no official rating for the temperature that they support. And I've got 3 GoPros and all 3 of them keep cutting out in this -6 cold anyways. Yeah, there's really low gains on this copter and I'm still hearing a little bit of a flutter. Interesting what these bigger batteries do to these small copters. Hopefully you can see this. It looks pretty epic in person. The problem with fog is it's white. The problem with snow is also white. Yeah, can you hear a little bit of a flutter there? My goodness, the gains are so low on this thing as it is. I'm gonna have to lower them even more, I think. I don't think I need to worry about the motors heating up though, do you? It seems to be flying nice anyways. Oh yeah. I love doing these power loops line of sight. My new thing. So I want to put a warning out about this copter running on a 4S. My advice would be don't do it, because this flight ended up in a fire, which I've never had before in the history of reviewing copters. At first I thought that the fire might have been caused by a short because this video ends in a crash into the snow, and I thought maybe that caused it. But when I reviewed the footage, I could see that the camera was actually burning up before it hit the ground. When I got to the copter, the battery was on fire. All of the wires on the copter were just completely melted. The motor wires had desoldered themselves from the ESC board, so I think a 4S is just pushing it too much on this copter and use a 3S. Other than that, I got a decent tune out of it. Here are my PIDs, but I wasn't able to take advantage of them for very long. There was plenty of power there on a 4S, and great features with this copter. You can see that I've actually got the VTX band and frequency on there as well, which is quite nice. We have that little white patch in the bottom right hand corner, which I predicted with it being a PAL camera, but that's not a big thing. A little bit of video noise, but nothing too debilitating. But yeah, if you run it on a 4S, from my experience, it's going to overload the system. So stick to a 3S and you should have a good copter. I'm gutted that this thing burnt up, and you can see there, funny colours on the camera. RIP Diatone GT-R90. There's my review. I'll put a link in the description if you wish to get one. As always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.